Welcome to Module 6 of your fourth PEP. So where we've been looked at data, we looked at how we can understand and know students, we talked about how assessment is part of that data story, beginning, end and throughout, and then we looked at some teaching strategies that address content, teaching strategies that look at the processes and that you might have, and classroom environment and strategies for different products that you might want students to produce in a class and also across a unit of work. So we're going to further just finish off a couple of little strategies in review, but also move forward into the area of the top and tail, some gifted and talented and those who have specific learning disabilities. So they are where we're heading today. But the first task I'm going to get you to do is write a paragraph, 2 paragraphs. So pause your video, take this information and say, well, how would I write a cohesive couple of paragraphs that tell that meta-narrative story in the GTPA context of this is my student data, this is my analysis and explicit thinking, some academic justification, use these sort of made up ones down here, insert them into your paragraphs, and here's my response as a teaching strategy. Now you've done it in task 1 already, but this is really just saying, here's a couple of paragraphs, and just review what you've written and say, as a person who's reviewing what you've written, would it hit that mark in terms of that analytical nature of the GTPA needs to be? So pause your video. I wanted to revisit this tic-tac-toe, or a choice board is another one that you can have, and here's some information about it, because I just think it is a great little tool, and you can very strongly evidence it, and there's a couple of videos that are there that talks about the tic-tac-toe, and you can have a look at that. Look back to my PowerPoint. And then again, look at this, little simple strategies. But in those simple strategies, it becomes important, and I use this as an illustrative example. Tic-tac-toe, I write that strategy, and you can describe it. But what the GTPA report asks you to do is to tell you the intent in it. So if it's a choice board, or that you might want to call it, it's intentionally designed to for the purpose of multiple learning styles, different levels. It's a tiering exercise. It's an interest exercise. So you're talking to readiness, interest, and learner profile by using this tool. By just describing this tool, but not linking it with the student data, is not being analytical. So when you use this tool, for example, as an illustration, or any of the strategies you use, please link it back to that data story. And I think you can use it for multiple reasons, but you have to justify it. And here's some things that you can use out of interest or learning mode. Useful resources about differentiated instruction are there that you might want to utilize or to see in terms of what you do. We've already had a look at that. Great ideas that there. Now I'm going to raise the aeroplane, so to speak, and get a larger view, because you're going to have to talk about some frameworks or some strategies and justify them. And you'll find in here HITS, which is high impact teaching strategies, and this comes out of the Victorian Government article, and it talks about the different pieces in a teaching cycle. How you structure, explicit teaching, worked examples, which is scaffolding, collaborative learning, the TAPS model, multiple exposures, which talk to the learning profile. Metacognitive strategies is a different, worth having a read, and this is a generic differentiated. So go into here and you'll see that it has some really concrete examples that you might find useful for you. It's also got assessment, curriculum and so on, and learning tasks linked in there. So it's a really comprehensive document you might find useful to frame some of your discussion and analysis in the GTPA. Let's have a look at the site. And here's the document, and it goes through the various areas of that jigsaw we saw previously. It goes contents, how it fits together, and there's our jigsaw, and each of those is elaborated here. Now, interestingly, it says, here's some of the areas of great teaching. Now, you also have to do your teaching, and you'll be assessed against the 37 APSTs alongside your GTPA report. And you can draw upon these as some examples of those. But also, you can also draw upon these for some of the explicit areas of the GTPA. For example, in terms of differentiated strategies, but also you can draw upon it to academically justify why things like structured lessons, explicit teaching, collaborative learning are useful. So if we have a look, it goes and relates it to Hattie's work. But let's have a look at a couple that we might want to just focus on. So setting goals, being explicit, why do we do that? Structuring lesson, instructional strategies is quite a valid. And notice here we have some 8-syllable videos and some worked examples. So you can get some really good concrete demonstrations of those. Explicit teaching, I'm going to scroll down to one. Worked examples, example of scaffolding strategy. Again, examples are there. Collaborative learning, we've talked about, and flexible grouping, for example. Here's some information about them. And great academic justification for why you're using it, for example. Multiple exposures, can be multiple exposures with different types, multi-sensory exposures, and again, strategies. So it goes on and talks about all these ones here. Feedback is one section that you must do in the GTPA, for example, worth having a read to see what insights you might have there. Thinking, higher order thinking strategies, again, could be used for your above standard student as your focus. Get some ideas from there. Differentiated teaching talks more generally about it and how you can get examples here, and here's some resources. So it gives you a range of things that you can harvest for information and for practice and demonstration. So worth having a look at in detail. Okay, so worth, as I said, having a look at that section. It's going to keep moving forward through our fly-through. So another one here is classes with big ability differences. You'll find that in your classes, and it'll give some pretty good strategies to have a look at that article about how you might cater for them. And you can use that perhaps as a strategy, but also academic justification. I'm going to quickly, drafting tool is an idea that you can use as it's a teaching strategy, so it's a bit of a one that can hit on a range of areas. It can differentiate content, interest, learning style, and how does it work? Let's go through acronym, role, audience, format, and topic. Often good in the performance areas, or where students are producing work, whether it be in language and English, whether it be in drama, for example, that you could use this. But it's more than that, and you don't want to overdo this strategy, but if you want to find more examples of how you could use it, look at that. But like again, if you're using a strategy, you've got to link it and ground it in your data. Link it and ground it with an academic justification. Here's some examples. For example, if you're doing history, the role of a king, the audience is the subject, and you're doing a proclamation is your product that you would do, and there's your content topic. It can be for a class activity or an extended unit of work here that you might do. So a whole range of things, and it gives some examples of how you can differentiate in content. And this is a tool that opens up your learning and a variety for students. Your role in the audience is a different way. For example, if you have a different perspective, then you'll think more critically, and different ways of producing that link to the modes of presentation. Here's a whole range of things that you could do. So in looking at this strategy, it might actually trigger you to say, oh, okay, I could use this elsewhere for a slightly different strategy as well. We do an exercise in class, and I encourage you to pause the video and you choose one of those. So are you a guide, an Aboriginal ranger, talking about that? Are you the wall that's looking out on the people who pass you over millennia and describing what you see? Are you a bird looking as a neutral observer, or is that looking at both sides? The coyote and roadrunner. Are you an oxygen molecule? In this here, what topics could you draw out of a mobile phone that you could use as a content? Interesting here. I love this one, Zacchaeus in the tree. The role of take the perspective of Jesus, and you're talking to the Pharisees, or Jesus talking to his disciples. Or maybe the perspective of Zacchaeus is the role, or the Pharisees are the role. So you can use this to elaborate. It's just a neat tool across the board, but also for differentiation. Here's another one, what differentiation is and what it's not. Now that we've covered this topic, have a look at that. I want to move on to then gifted and talented and learning supported. There, in terms of a bell curve of ability, we're talking at top and tail here. So if we want to meet the needs of all students, then we have to address some of those other needs here. And that forms part of, the APST 1.5, which is here, full range of abilities. Watch this video. He's incredible. Now, he's just got it's got a twist at the end that you should absolutely watch this. And he's absolutely sharp. His mathematics is his thing, but he's got a twist and and so on. So he's a gifted kid. So have a look at giftedness. Here's some information about how you might assess and classify giftedness and what tools are used, and the Australian curriculum linked about how we might cater for them. But you see, giftedness might not be universal. Giftedness might be in one particular area. Gifted in mathematics but not really good writer. Gifted here but not really social. Or gifted in terms of a social context. Kids who can really make things happen, just always connect and have high EQ perhaps. So here is Gang's differential model, and I'm not going to go on the difference between gifted and talented. I don't think it's important for the practitioner and teacher to know that. For the specialist, personal learning support or gifted teacher, yes, it is important. But here's one of the what they call domains: environment, interpersonal, all the different areas. Multi-giftedness perhaps is an area of interest for some. Video about how you could, in a very practical and simple way, talk about cater for that gifted kid, or if not gifted, at the high end student. And you might want to take some of these strategies into your teaching, but also into your GTVA report. So watch that video. It's simple, it's short, but it gives some pretty clear ideas. And at the end it talks about those clear ideas. Watch your video first before you dive into that. And disability strategies, and this talks about, again, a video. Watch that and talks about how can you cater in the classroom context rather than, okay, go to learning support or have a teacher aid. It's talking about you as a teacher and how you meet that support students with disability or learning needs. Again, that's an specific AITSL standard that you need to demonstrate. So there's a few clues that might be applicable for you. And it talks about, in the disability legislation, about same basis, reasonable adjustment, the concept of equal opportunity in terms of an equity sense. So there's a real obligation for you to do that. And this is actually go in here, and it talks about some particular strategies and answers some particular questions about you as a teacher to support students with disability. So have a look at that document. So that's the end of today. And what we're doing. Hope you're now rounded off. So we really have covered the essence. Now the next week that we're forecasting is actually sort of tying it together somewhat. So we've gone through the range of data, range of how assessment fits with data, the response that we have in teaching strategies that we have, and we've looked at the two extremes that are there. Hopefully you're feeling confident now to take these things forward into your practice.